Thank you so much for joining me today. I am the_Dab86. Today I want to address the 6 major affixes and, of course, one-shot kill by treasure goblins is not a bug, and I'm going to explain why as we go over the affixes. First thing I want to bring your attention to is the dungeon affixes list. The first one is a buff to yourself. The second one is going to be the primary dungeon affix. Every key will have a no matter how low of a sigil that you're running. Now, there are 6 of them that are extremely dangerous. They are meant to be avoided, and one of them can even be destroyed. The first one we're going to be starting off with is Death Pulse, which is upon killing a monster, it releases a deadly lightning pulse after a short delay. I believe that this is based off of a percentage of health that the mob had. So I believe it's between about 2 to 5% of the mob's HP will be this lightning pulse damage. The reason why people are being one-shot by them is because they're treasure goblins. So they have a higher health pool than a general mob would. From the 2 videos that I've seen, calculating it roughly from the damage that I see that they're putting through, because their damage numbers are on screen, Kor&Dab and Mythazina, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your names, is for Kor&Dab, it was roughly about 585,000 damage. And that would loosely translate to about 17,000 inbound damage from the lightning pulse. For Mythazina, it was about 750,000 damage to kill the goblin, and that would be roughly 22,000 incoming damage on the lightning pulse. In both cases, would one-shot a character. When I did my test on it, I took on just one of the giant tree ents and did about 153, try not to take into account overkill, 153,000, and I took about 4,300 damage. It left me barely alive. So even if you had fortified or a barrier, you would die to mobs with such large health pools when they death pulse. Now, death pulse, of course, when it activates, you'll hear like a ringing sound, and then it will, of course, do a red circle around where the mob died. So to go ahead and show examples of this, this is Kor&Dab as he takes on the treasure goblin. So looking at the damage numbers, because I put it in slow-mo and calculated it here, so it one-shots him. I looked at his overall stats. He has about 9,000 health. So if it was a flat number, in theory, he should have walked away with about 5,000 health still remaining. And I looked at the rest of the key too, because the only thing that I could think of that would play an effect in the affixes is the bottom affix. It can be Backstabber, which you take more damage from stuff from behind. But he didn't have that. The second one is Mythazina, going roughly off the damage he outputs. He did about 750,000 damage and died instantly. So it has to be a percentage of the health is what it is based upon. Now for my own encounter, once again, this is a wildwood, one of those tree ents. I attack it. I didn't want any barrier or anything like that. Did it. Walked away with only having taken 4,300 health. You know, I was barely left alive, but it didn't have a lot of health either. So that just goes to once again prove that I think it is based off the health pool of the mob that you kill. Of course, this becomes potentially dangerous for melees in big groups of like zombies, skeletons, things like that. As those are all pulsing, it could do a whole lot of damage. Or one singular mob that has one large health pool. Elites, the butcher, a boss, a treasure goblin. So I don't think it's a bug. I think it's an unintended issue with the treasure goblins having such large health pools. Quick and easy fix for that is make it so treasure goblins can't death pulse. Or just give it a second to death pulse, which can be hard. You got to kind of train your brain to avoid it, so that way you don't run in there and get death pulsed on. Lightning resistance, even if you took a potion, wouldn't be enough to stop the incoming damage. You would die. You'd have to have almost 90% reduction. The next of the big 6 is Lightning Storm. Lightning gathers above the player. Get into the protection dome to avoid severe outcomes. You'll hear like a chiming sound. And the little icon that it has will move around, and it'll place down a shield by an icon on your mini map, as well as like a orange kind of marker. You'll get a marker above your head that will start basically counting down through like a bluish color into a red, and then it'll be a lightning strike. You want to make sure to be in the shield, because that is also another ability that once can one shot you, at least with lower health. I didn't test up higher, but a higher key is going to do more. And to show an example of that, heard the ding, see the countdown, and blah, one shot you. And it just absolutely destroyed me. Took me out like I was nothing. And once again, floating about 5k health, no barrier or fortified or anything like that. So if you're just coming out of a group of mobs or in between mobs, or in team play where this could also become extremely dangerous because it only follows one player, is it could one-shot someone not near it that doesn't have defensives. The third of the big three is going to be Stormbane's Wrath. Stormbane's Wrath chases players around, releasing deadly pulse when reaching a player. So these three are all lightning damage. First three are lightning damage. And what it will do is it's a giant rock that floats around. It'll open up when it goes to explode. It has like a rocky granite lightning sound as it does it, and it'll spread open. You'll get a big area circle that will let you know the area of effect. Of course, want to avoid that, as it will detonate to a ton of damage, as demonstrated here. You can see it sitting there floating next to me. You got the icon on the map. Heard the sound. Once again, just wanted to replay the sound as I wasn't talking over it. You saw it pulse. Once again, a huge hit, completely avoidable with the circle I indicate where I need to get out of. But when you're fighting mobs and stuff like that, or if your dash is down, may not, but it's one of those things that you still do not want to get. The fourth item that you're going to be dealing, or fourth affix that you're going to be looking at to avoid, is Drifting Shade. Drifting players, upon reaching them, it explodes for a heavy damage and creates a nightmare field that dazes victims. This one is depicted by like a sound and a white ghost skull that will, the longer it travels, the faster it will get, so you can't just avoid it forever. Once it hits you, you've got about a second to get out of it before it explodes, and then leaves a zone on the ground that pacifies you. Essentially, you won't be able to attack or use abilities. That also does damage time. This is another hard hitter as well. I only got it to proc in combat, so if you're just walking around, threat, unless you enter combat. And of course, if you're playing team play, more of them will spawn, depending on how many players are in the group. So for an example of this, and I do believe it might be shadow damage, because it says for damage and creates a nightmare field. Believing it is shadow damage. I have no real way to confirm that, but let me go ahead and show you an example. Here you go. There it is. The shwoo, field, the explosion, and then the after effect. If you don't have, so if you don't have defenses, you will die, most likely, for that one. That's another hard hitter. Once again, 5k health. I haven't, I can't test. I don't have health. For a higher player or higher keys, it's going to do more damage. And like I said, if you have more players, more of them will spawn. You want to make sure to also avoid the other. The fifth affix, that is another hard hitter, is going to be Blood Blister. Killing a monster has a chance to spawn a Blood Blister. After a short time, it explodes, dealing heavy area damage. This one is different than the other 5, because you can physically attack it and destroy it, or you can range it. You do have to go a good ways away. Stepping around a corner will not work, but you have to go at least far enough away that it's almost off your mini-map. So if you get stuck in combat or anything like that, you could potentially hit from this, as here. And it, of course, is indicated by the humorous looking thing. It'll make like a nasty fart. And then it pulses, grows, does that, and explodes. You can see, once again, it easily shaved off about 3,000 of my health, just one of them. From what I could see as well, only one of them will spawn while another one's active, so you don't have multiples, unless you have another person spawn. You, of course, will also be indicated where it's at by a red skull on the map, and as you get further away, flowing. But like I said, this one you can range or destroy it, so that makes it different than the other three. It's probably why its damage is lower, because it can completely ignored way differently than the other ones where you have to avoid them altogether. One last thing I wanted to say about Blood Blister is I believe it might be physical damage. I'm not sure. There's no way to really tell because it doesn't say what kind of damage it does. It just says that it explodes. The final dungeon affix is volcanic. While in combat, gouts of flame periodically erupt near players. There's normally 3 of them. Could be more with more players. It does a huge amount of damage. It'll be indicated by like a rumbling burning sound. Then, of course, you'll get 3 burning circles that begin to explode lava. You want to be standing in that because as they explode, it will shave down your health exceptionally fast, as demonstrated once again here. You can see here I've got the 3 circles. They started exploding. I had to step out there before I took that final hit, but it quickly lowered my health to the point that I had to use a potion. It's a large amount of fire damage, so once again, fire resistance help, but once again, completely avoided just by dashing out of it or just not standing in it. Most commonly, off to the side, not normally directly under me, as long as I don't take my character through it. Now, before I close out the video, one other thing I wanted to mention is the 7th one, which is, I didn't put it on this because it's not technically dangerous within itself, and that is the Avenger primary aspect, or affix. Because once again, we're going to go by what affects us, primary aspect, and then the other 3 are honestly lesser secondary aspects that affect damage from the mobs and how they produce and how they react. But Avenger, basically, as you kill mobs, buffs the other ones around it, making them stronger and tougher. Things where I've noticed that can be out of hand is if you kill go against an elite with fire enchanted, fire pulses can become ridiculously dangerous, and also poison enchantment. The poison it puts down can be ridiculously. And God help you if you come across the Butcher and you buff him with a whole bunch of that, because then he becomes exceedingly crazy to deal with. The only other aspect that can be dangerous in the secondaries is Backstabber, because once again, if you face a way to move away from one of those fire enchanted mobs, he can hit you in the back with his fire wave and it can do a ton of damage. Other things is there are some mobs that go invisible and they try to sneak up behind damage. Backstabber makes them hellaciously dangerous to you, any class. But as always, once again, I do not believe that Death Pulse is a glitch. I think it works, and my heart goes out to those who put time into their characters, and unfortunately, they died to a mechanic that is intended to do what it's intended to do. And like I said, 5 out of these 6 can be avoided just by moving out of it. The other one can be ranged or attacked. But keep that in mind as you go into Nightmare Dungeons, that Treasure Goblins, if you have Death Pulse, have health pools large enough to make your day your last day. Make sure to hit a follow down below, subscribe, leave a comment, and come follow me on Twitch, @the_dab6.